Welcome, everyone, to Wizards and Warp Drives, the podcast where three grown-ass men talk shit and do shits about the things they love.
Thanks, Nacho. We do appreciate you pointing the shits out.
Yeah. We are biological entities, and we are old men, and we took care of business before we started the podcast, just for your convenience.
Yeah. Inside joke. Everyone's running late because we're all sitting on the toilet.
Anyway. We were talking about having three toilets and three guys sitting on it right beside each other in like a public toilet, handing toilet paper to each other and having a chat as they do their business.
Yeah. Like Imperial Rome. That's what they used to do. They used to literally sit next to each other and talk.
Yeah.
My name is Nacho, and joining me as per usual is Fred from How to RPG and the mighty glue stick himself, Mr. AJ Pickett.
Oh yeah, we had a question as to why you calling me the mighty glue stick. The answer is that I started off my YouTube career as a crafting channel, making homebrewed terrain and miniatures, because I'm a sculptor and do that sort of stuff. So that's where I got the glue stick title from. And the mighty is because I like the sound of it. I'm a fan of the Mighty Boosh, and it just rolled off the tongue and was weird enough to be kind of noticeable. And now I'm stuck with it. And people actually call me Glue and Glue Stick as a nickname, which is funny.
Stuck with the glue.
Yeah, but also I've stuck with my channel, and I've been around for a very long time, so it kind of fits that the Mighty Glue Stick will be the last D&D channel. But we don't say D&D anymore; we say fantasy games.
Tabletop RPG.
RPGs, yeah. We want to get that word out of our mouths to refer to our hobby, because it's been poisoned.
Yeah. Okay. And before we start, actually, a little golf clap around. Our boy Fred here has published a supplement on Drive-Thru RPG.
True.
Worked very hard. Yeah, so congratulations, Fred.
Thank you. Yes, I think Shadow Dark is a great game, and I really wanted people to have access to classes and ancestries for free, but also if they wanted to pay some money, that would be appreciated, because it did take a lot of time, and it wasn't just me. It was AJ Pickett here and Mitchell Reed, and Wally did all the layout, Wally DM, and my brother did the art, because I'm not going to use AI art, and I'm not going to pay some overpriced artist who thinks he's worth far more than he is. Thank you very much.
Yeah. We were just discussing some incidents in the industry which have not painted some of the artists in a very good light after they panicked and started scalping the clients that they were working for. So bad form artists out there.
Yeah.
Understand that you are now at you've got the begging bowl out. Stop acting like we need you.
The problem is all my family are artists, and they're the least flaky of them, but all the other artists I've ever come across are the flakiest nuts under the sun.
Yeah. Really I know this. I have done commissioned artwork, and it was incredibly hard to do. It's very mentally taxing. It's not an easy industry to do, because artwork requires a lot of mental focus, and if you're doing it for somebody else, it's very hard to keep that focus, and particularly if you're doing something on that they want but you don't necessarily like, it's incredibly mentally taxing to do. So a lot of artists are very, very flaky, and so they'll don't pay money up front for artwork and stuff like that. They should be working on a delivery basis.
Exactly. So let's talk about flaky art, shall we? John Carter, I believe.
Yeah, talking of toxic environments, Mars.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand how toxic Mars is. Let me just give you a little bit of let me give you a little bit of astronomical facts here. First of all, there's these chemicals in the soil in Mars that you would have to filter out of any soil if it gets into the environment of your spacecraft or your habitat. Everybody's going to get real sick. They're going to get cancer and die. So you need to. The idea of getting some Martian soil and just growing potatoes with your poo, absolutely not. He would have been dead. So they skipped over that rather big problem. When Elon lands his first ship up on Mars, he's going to be landing robots. He's not going to be landing people. He's going to be sending robots up there first, and they'll be wandering around and doing surveys and things like that. So it should be pretty interesting. But I think Mars is pretty much going to be a manufacturing hub and a mining hub more than a habitation for humans, because it's just not very practical. And it's very cold. The atmosphere is carbon dioxide, and there's no water. It's like as dry as Antarctica. So yeah, it's pretty hard. Pretty hard. Imagine Antarctica, but strip all the ice off it and make it like the deserts of Australia, without anything to eat. And that's what you're dealing with. So you have to take
I
everything
was
with you.
wondering if we could get through the podcast without mentioning Elon Musk.
Yes.
We got
Well,
5 minutes.
Well, history will paint him in a different light, I'm sure. But at the moment, yeah, he's rather controversial for good reason. But he is doing amazing things. Can't deny that.
We are going to talk about a very underrated movie that we all like, called Jack Carter. He does have, his name is Jack Carter, actually. John Carter of Mars was the original title, by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Born in 1871, he came from a predominant family. Father was a Civil War veteran, and he failed to gain admission to West Point. Worked various jobs, including a ranch, gold mining, before becoming a writer. He's probably best known for Tarzan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he also wrote a series of novels known as the Barsoom series. So Tarzan came out in 1912, and Princess of Mars also came out in 1912.
Can we just get that concept for a second? His grandfather was a Civil War veteran, and he published some sci-fi, and then we watched a movie of it not so long ago. Man, history is not that far off. Like the Civil War wasn't that long ago when you think about it. It's just a few generations. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's basically like the godfather of sci-fi. Ray Bradbury considers him to be the most influential writer of our century.
Yeah, Jules Verne and Orson Welles. He's up there with them for sure.
He would also probably fall into the the grandfather, like the other two you just mentioned, of fantasy as well. Fantasy and science fiction, because he did both.
Yeah,
very much.
Yeah, and Barsoom translated very well into some very early role-playing games back in the 1980s. Space 1889, which a lot of if you look at Spelljammer covers, and then you look at the Space 1889 covers, you'll see that Spelljammer is a direct rip-off of another company's work, with the flying around through space on space galleons and things like that. Was absolutely Barsoom themed sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it started off appearing as like in magazines before becoming a published book. The Princess of Mars in 1912, followed by The Gods of Mars in 1913 and The Warlord of Mars in 1914. The series did carry on. It follows John Carter, a Confederate soldier who is transported to Mars, or Barsoom as it is known. It was very popular due to its sort of, pulp adventures and romantic themes, but kind of declined in popularity over time. It was attempted. There's been so many attempts to adapt this film. This is probably one of the most longest running initial. Like Fred was talking about, we were talking before we even started that. We kept discovering other people, so many people involved with this, including like in the 1930s. This was initially planned to be Disney's first animation, but before they settled on Snow White. Ray Harryhausen was going to do a stop motion in the 1950s. John McTiernan, aka the director of Die Hard, was going to do a live action version with Tom Cruise at one stage. You can speak to some others, Fred, as well, I believe.
Yeah, there was attempts, I think, about 5 years after the printing of the book, attempts to try to turn it into an animated cartoon, not by Disney, and that fell through very, very quickly. There are so many. This story is cursed. Honestly, it is cursed. Like everything that they've ever tried to do, and the story itself is so advanced and including so many crazy things. It's so expensive to make. The smartest way would have probably to make it an animated movie rather than to have made it a live action movie, because of just what you have to do. There's too much. So the fact that we got a live action John Carter is amazing.
Yeah, I think Tom Cruise would have done quite well in it because he is quite shorter than most average humans. So if he is on Mars where their gravity is less, the people would be taller than him when you think about it.
Sorry.
Can he do a good Southern accent?
I don't know where that came from, but it was pretty funny.
They wouldn't have to, they wouldn't have to scale the people up, as I think what AJ's saying.
Yeah. I'm Tom Carter of Mars. Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, can I don't know what you want to say next, Nacho, but the name of this movie was really a pain in the ass. Like just the name of the movie. I mean, the trailer was bad as well, but the name was bad. Like I remember this coming and like John Carter. It looked to me like a Western. That's my impression. It was a Western about a Confederate soldier or something like that. But I got Western vibes and old American Army vibes, and that's what I thought it was. I had no idea it was science fiction. I had no idea what I was getting into. This is in a time where Westerns are dead. Like you can't really do a Western and think you can succeed, as Kevin Costner has discovered recently with his Horizon. It's been dead for a long time. And its original name was The Princess of Mars. I have never read the original book. I had no idea of the title itself. I only learned all this information out after I did a bit of research years ago. Once I watched the movie and like, what is going on? Like, oh, this is cool. Where did it come from? And the original movie title being John Carter of Mars is very different from The Princess of Mars. And, with Disney changing it and there's talks about Disney changing it and the director changing it, Andrew, because they feared that the name Mars would not do well at the box office, and so they had to change that. And I'm like, you could have replaced the name Mars with Barsoom, and nobody would have known what the fuck you're talking about. But if you're worried about Mars, Barsoom's there, right?
Yeah.
And then there was the discussion about whether if we call it John Carter, then the girls aren't going to like it, and if we could put the word princess in there, then the boys won't like it. Good Lord,
it just screams corporate oversight over creativity and making decisions out of fear. Of failure decisions, basically. And it's just like
absolutely.
And the answer, of course, is lean into the subject material as hard as you possibly can, because you are seeking a core audience who will market it for you. That's the whole point of this thing. The general audience doesn't exist unless, of course, you're dealing with an international audience where all of the money on seats in that particular era was China and Russia and places like that, where they don't have the same. So it could have been like, well, it doesn't translate very well into these other cultures and things like that. And unfortunately, they also don't have the literacy in movies that we've had in the Western world with Hollywood and stuff all this time. So we have to re-establish these baselines for Hollywood plots, and all the sort of things that we consider cliches are all brand new to them. So so it's really difficult, and you get movies like The Meg 2, for instance, where you had one character who didn't speak English the entire way through. It was just like, it was like, because that must have been one of the stipulations. Like, if we're going to market this in China, then you have to have a character that speaks Mandarin the entire way through the movie.
Yeah.
Oh no, that was the Cloverfield Paradox.
Right.
That was that movie. Yeah.
But let's get real. The name John Carter tells you nothing. The trailers were terrible. Like it looked like an old Western action movie, which is wrong for this time. Those are dead. And I did not understand what I would be going to see. I never saw it at the theatre. And when I think back about what was going on, it would have been probably smarter to call this the Battle for Barsoom or Saving Barsoom, and get rid of John Carter and get rid of the name, get rid of the word princess, because it's about the princess and John Carter, and it's about Barsoom. Just do that. You're probably going to get more people showing up to watch it if it's just called the Battle for Barsoom.
Should have just called it Tarzan on Mars.
Yeah, we'll just call it Barsoom. Nobody will know what the fuck
you would have known what you got then.
I mean, yeah.
They did not know how to. how to market this film at all. So this came out 2012. So this was post Avatar as well. So that was 2009. Other films that came out in 2012, we got the Avengers, and we also got the Dark Knight Rises. So there was a massive like scope in superhero films. It also got tanked at the box office by the Hunger Games, which was released pretty much the week later. And yeah, they just didn't market it properly at all. The trailers didn't actually, the original trailers didn't show the story. They were just clips of like all this insane action. It didn't tell you what the story was about. And to the point where one of the guys that was involved in the Edgar Rice Burroughs Foundation actually took all the footage and re-edited it and chucked it up on YouTube. And the director ended up posting that edited trailer that basically a fan did as the official trailer rather than the one that Disney marketed.
Wow.
They paid $5 million for a Super Bowl trailer, and all the Super Bowl trailer showed was clips of various footage of the film just going into the title. It didn't show, and that was it.
What was worse is the Disney trailer was boring. I remember watching it. I could not figure out what was going on. It was just people standing around, and this is because most of the footage, the action scenes, had not been shot, and because so many of the action scenes had heavy CGI that hadn't been finished. Yeah. It was
they almost marketed it like a sequel, like they were teasing something that we're supposed to know what it was, but nobody ever told us what it was.
Yeah, no, they were lying. I think they assumed everyone knew what John Carter was because it's such an old IP. You know, they were, but they didn't emphasize like the film's rich history or the sci-fi roots of it at all. You know, they were under the assumption that everyone knew, like John Carter is up there with Tarzan as you just need the name. Finally, I've been waiting 100 years for a John Carter film. It's finally coming. Yeah, no one knew who this was.
Yeah. What was amazing is I remember watching that trailer once I found out it existed, and it gives you goosebumps. Holy Toledo. If I'd seen that, I would have definitely wanted to go to that movie.
And it definitely was a movie that was made for the big screen, which is the tragedy
IMAX.
of it. Yeah.
It was shot in IMAX as well. So 2012, we finally got the adaptation. It was directed by Andrew Stanton as his first ever live action film. So this is a guy that he originally applied to be a director with Disney and he didn't get the job. He was hired by Pixar. He co-wrote Toy Story, Bugs Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., and then he went on to direct Finding Nemo and WALL-E.
Wow.
So he had already made Disney $5 billion before he was handed this film as his first live action franchise. After this film flopped, he was sent back to Pixar to do Finding Dory. So he was,
ouch. Ouch. Yeah. It's a big leap to go from one form of movie making. Like animation is totally different from a live action thing, because that's you got a whole big industrial machine, casting and catering and all that sort of hoo-ha. So it's really like a community that you join for the filming period. I don't know if you guys have ever worked on film sets and stuff.
No.
It's like it's like a circus. It's like a circus. You're a part of a circus for a little while. You got catering and all that sort of stuff. You got the extras over here in the corner playing hacky sack out of earshot of the assistant director, who's like a little tyrant with a microphone. You got the director and the camera guys who all set up like a little military special forces unit. You got secondary production who are like working on sets and stuff, and all the carpenters and gaffers and all those guys just milling around, constantly building and stuff. And so it's organized chaos is what I'm saying. And if you're not in that lifestyle, if you step into it as a director all of a sudden, you've got, not only have you got the entire movie to worry about, but you've got the entire production that you have to learn as well. So it's a huge ask, and it's not an easy transition at all.
Andrew's an interesting character because I mean one of the reasons his success was probably part of why this failure he was part of this failure. I wouldn't say that he was instrumental, but he certainly had a part to play in it. But Stanton was a huge fan of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom novels.
Yeah.
And he had always wanted to see it on the screen, and it had never been done as a child. And he wanted a faithful adaptation as well. And because he had had so much success, one of the bigwigs allowed him to pretty much do what he wanted. So they gave him $250 million.
They wanted another Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates
Yeah.
of the Caribbean opened the doors for a lot of these live-action Disney films
Mhm.
because it was such an unexpected success.
Yeah.
So,
You could just imagine them walking in saying, "Imagine pirate ships, but they fly."
well, they say that in the film, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But being an animator or a producer and director of animation is probably part of the problem for him because his approach to filming John Carter is he approached like an animation film, which you can't do, which meant, I mean, using extensive pre-visuals is fine because that's quite normal for high CGI films. So that's not an issue. Reshoots are actually fine to refine the story if you're having bits missing. But he was so used to doing reshoots on animated movies, which doesn't cost a lot of money to do that. But on a live action film, it's horrendously expensive. So the movie's budget ballooned out to a horrible, another $50 million was added on there. It's not as bad as it sounds. Like, when people say, oh, this movie was $300 million to make and it was a bomb, I'd like to remind you that Waterworld sunk like the thing it was. And it sunk really well a couple of times. It cost about $300 million and made nothing, money whatsoever.
The theme park is actually the attraction at Disneyland has made more money, or Universal Studios has made more money than the movie has.
Yeah. And so this is really going to help contribute to the financial woes, but it is not the only reason that it struggled. And I think if Andrew had been told, yes, you can do it, but you have to do it animated because it's going to be too expensive, I think it would have been successful. I really do, because it's his wheelhouse and it would have just been so much less expensive to make it an animated movie.
Yeah, and there are bits of it that are very much like an animation, like the little critter that runs extremely fast, and just how high John Carter can jump in the thing is not realistic. Like, sure, it's a sci-fi and everything, but Mars has physics that the modern audience understands, and I think some concession to the understanding that we have, like, even if an Earth person was on Mars, you can only jump 5 times further than normal.
But that's an influence, like gravity has a different effect on a alien being. That's Superman.
Yeah.
Like Burroughs basically wrote the origin of Superman.
Yeah. That's where the origin of Superman comes from, is from John Carter. Yeah.
So, so I mean, it had a solid cast as well. They were unknowns in the leads, so Taylor Kitsch and Lynn Collins. They were really determined to make Taylor Kitsch a star back in the day, but I think this bombed his career. But we got really good, solid actors like William Dafoe did Tars Tarkas, Mark Strong, Dominic West, and even young Bryan Cranston was in the film in the beginning as well. So well, he wasn't that young, but before he sort of took off with Breaking Bad. So do you want me to go through the plot, Fred, or you prefer...
do the plot? Let's be quick and let's get on to the other stuff, the good stuff.
It is kind of convoluted, so I think it is. Yeah, so it jumps around the place. So it starts off in 1881 on Earth. Edgar Rice Burroughs attends the funeral of his uncle John Carter. Carter's body is placed in a tomb that can only be unlocked from the inside, and Burroughs receives Carter's personal journal and begins reading.
This is classic H.P. Lovecraft. That's how H.P. Lovecraft starts all of his stories. I inherit some journal from some mad person. Yeah.
But here's the problem: is that is not even actually the start of the movie. The start of the movie is they give us a look at Mars or Barsoom.
Yeah,
And
true.
then they jump to this scene.
Mm.
So we start with this, and we're like, okay, where does this all fit? And then we jump over, and we're dealing with Ned and John being chased by some stranger, and then dies
for
mysteriously
a fair while at the start of the movie. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
I mean, at least the first 10 minutes, but it's enough. It's enough to throw people. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having a story opening with something happens, somebody dies, and then somebody reads their journal, and then going into the story, and then coming back to that person at the very end. But this is not what this movie does. We jump back to Ned a few times,
Yeah.
and this story has a lot of flashbacks.
Yeah.
So good luck, Nacho, describing the rest of this plot. Away you go.
Okay, so yeah, once he starts reading the journal, he then goes to 1868 to Arizona, where John Carter, a former Confederate soldier, is arrested by Union Colonel Powell, who is played by Bryan Cranston. He wants his help to deal with the Apache. Carter is obviously, I guess, a veteran, a very notorious U.S. cavalry soldier who has given up, which you learn throughout the film, why he doesn't want to be part of a army anymore. He escapes. It's quite funny, that scene, actually, where he keeps trying to
that is actually that is a really legitimately funny scene.
They run into a bunch of Apache warriors, and Carter and Powell hide in a cave. The Indians don't want to go anywhere near this cave, which immediately tells you something's up.
The black spider.
He's obsessed by finding gold.
The shepherds are restless. No, don't go there, white man. It's bad juju. It's
the mysterious Thurn appears and attacks. Carter kills him and accidentally activates a medallion which transports him to Mars. Any thoughts on this moment of the film?
It is a bit messed up in terms of its ordering. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep it simple, stupid. Start at the beginning, have a middle, and have an end, and try not to jump back and forth too much. And there's quite a bit of jumping back and forth at the beginning of the movie, and it continues throughout the entire movie.
What?
Yeah, they're trying to establish that John Carter has got two major problems. One is that he's got a body back on Earth, and the other thing is that the Thurns can move freely between the worlds and are aware of the whole situation, and he is not. So, although the Thurns are the architect of their own problem, they really have a lot of power over the situation from the get-go. And it's really a story of the Thurns kind of screwing up because they're so focused on politics on Mars and stuff and keeping the status quo and keeping everything concealed that they don't realize the magnitude of their error.
Yeah, the Thurns want to make Mars great again.
Yeah.
I think something that's kind of glazed over here that is really, really important is he isn't physically transported. He's projected to Mars. His body remains on Earth.
Makes no sense about him having all these special powers on Mars. It's like, why don't you just make a body adapted to Mars in the first place?
No. So the projection is...
But we don't ask that question.
There's a physical copy made of him that goes to Mars.
Like a transporter.
There's now two versions. There's the real version on Earth, and the version, if you were to read through the rest of the series, you'd discover that if you kill the version on Mars, you can't kill John Carter because the version on Earth is still alive.
Yeah.
The Thurns would have to kill John Carter if they wanted to kill him, which they will be trying to.
Yeah. So that's why he locks himself in a tomb.
Which is why he's locked in the tomb. But you don't discover all this information till later on.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means he could make multiple copies of himself and soon send to Mars if he needed to, should the other copy at Mars or Barsoom die. So keep going with the story.
Perfect setup for a video game.
For the leaping scenes and the Tharks showing up, right?
Yeah, so arrival on Mars. So due to the low gravity, he gains superhuman strength and agility. So he wakes up, he doesn't know where he is. He tries to run, ends up flying, and we get kind of that sort of montage of him trying to suss out the powers. He is then captured by the Tharks, a nomadic tribe of green Martians, and their leader, Tars Tarkas, who is voiced by the always great William Dafoe.
Really, on Mars, everybody would sound like Mickey Mouse because of the atmosphere. But anyway,
there was a lot of
if you're speaking in a carbon dioxide atmosphere, it would sound very different.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of comparison between this and Avatar. when, with the way they animated. These looked a lot more cartoony, even with the high budget. But yeah, still good. And you also get to see the eggs and the baby. They're not the most.
So it's important to point out that the Tharks are native to Mars, and John Carter and the rest of the humanoids are not native to Mars originally. And so it implies this really, really ancient history where there used to be travel between the planets and stuff, and it broke down, and this human population got separated and are now native to Mars as well.
It does a really cool thing I like as well is when he gets there. There's this ongoing joke where, because obviously he can't speak Martian, and the Martians are impressed by his jumping and they want to talk to him. And there's this ongoing joke where they mistakenly call him Virginia,
Virginia,
which goes on throughout the film. But I think they deal with I quite like the way they deal with the translation, like how he learns to suddenly understand him through that milk they give him, because they chuck him in the nursery with all the little baby ones.
Yeah. I think in the book he was taught the language by Sola.
It's all psychic abilities. It's all communicated.
You see that a lot. I mean, this is the Star Wars thing, right? So the universal translator, or in the Avengers Ant-Man thingy, he gets like some sort of alien goo. It's all
My favorite is Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy.
Yeah, the fish, the babel fish in the air.
All right, so going back to this plot. So he's captured by the Tharks. They decide he's going to be like a pet or trophy or some sort of champion for Tars Tarkas. And he winds up rescuing a woman because there's a battle between these sky ships, and he saves her, and then winds up blowing up some ships. And the Tharks think this is great, saved the woman and blew some shit up, which is exactly what Tharks like to do.
Oh yeah, the Tharks hate the humanoids. Yeah,
hate the humanoids.
Are the orcs
and then he gets
and
then he gets tied up with this woman, Deja, who is trying to convince him to help fight a war, and he doesn't want to get involved. And
Deja is of course the secret daughter of the chieftain, even though they eschew any sort of familial bonds like that in favor of communal.
No, that's Sola. Sola is
it's Sola.
Is Tars Tarka's daughter. Yeah, she's the one that basically she becomes like John Carter's nursemaid.
And it was also the one that goes, "Don't go there; it's forbidden." So she's like the exposition tool. Yeah. So she informs the audience what's going on.
Yeah. So they go into a temple where they were not supposed to go, get into a lot of trouble. Sola can't stop them. They learn a little bit more about what needs to happen next, and they wind up going down the
canals
the river,
of Mars.
Is, or whatever the heck it is, and then find a strange structure and learn that basically what's happened to John, why he's here, where he's from. Deja actually believes him now and doesn't think he's a raving moron or an idiot. And they wind up getting captured eventually, but not before there's a massive battle between some Tharks that aren't Tars Tarkas' tribe. And John Carter decides to face them all, kills the fuckers pretty efficiently, goes down, doesn't die.
Some of those flashbacks of him bearing his wife and his daughter on Earth.
We get a lot of that.
Anybody who's read any of the Gore novels, which I've read a lot of, controversial as they are, but it was the 80s, actually the 90s, that very much inspired by that segment of the book where Gore is an alternate world that he's on, like it's like a counter Earth thing, and killing hundreds in a day, of classic sort of legendary thing. It's like that's John Carter's, unbeatable in battle.
Exactly. He is presented as being just so much rage. You just can't beat this guy. He's absolutely out of control, even though everybody is much bigger than he is. He's saved by Deja's father, who shows up with his ship and blasts what remaining Tharks are left. He is rescued and nursed back to health, and then he has a scene where he escapes with help to talk to Deja, and Deja realizes that he will not fight for her and fight for Barsoom and help Helion. So she says, "I'm going to tell you how to get back home." So gives him the signs or the words that are required to trigger the medallion, and he doesn't go back. But she doesn't know this. She thinks he has. He instead hides himself, and you see him in a situation where he winds up going back to the Tharks, getting into trouble, winds up in an arena, fighting along Tars Tarkas, who is now been deposed by one of his lieutenants, who decided he was too weak and he had basically betrayed the Tharks, and so they fight together, wind up with Solar in the arena as well.
If you watch the Star Wars prequels and the arena fight scene against the monsters, there we go.
That's where the Star Wars movies got the idea from, is from this arena scene.
Absolutely.
And the gold bikini.
And the gold bikini.
And the gold bikini, absolutely, yes. And blimey, is it good? It's better in this movie than it is in the Star Wars Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No shade to Princess Leia, but yeah, she.
Yeah, Collins rocks it, doesn't she? Anyway, then we have a situation where the white apes are revealed. We finally find out what these exciting things are. The eyeless, huge, 4 arms, and he winds up taking out 2 of them.
Blue blood
Everywhere. Then he challenges the new leader of the Tharks, and he gets really pissed, decides it's time to chop John Carter's head off, and we think somebody lost a head, but you don't know in the scene, but we discover that John Carter, with one swoop, has taken him out, and the Tharks rally behind him. They go and try to save Helion and Deja from marriage to a Sub-Than, who's basically the evil idiot.
He's been manipulated by the
Therns,
by the Therns,
yeah. But he is a traditionalist Thark, essentially, who believes in their traditional tribal ways and stuff like that. So
there was 2 actors in this film, Dominic West and the other guy, that looked so similar. I kept getting confused. Did you find that?
Yeah, but that half the problem is that all the names start with T. Like we can get back to that, but yeah. So we get that scene, and so he winds up rallying. They go after the Predator city to try to take them down and rescue Deja and rescue Barsoom from the fate worse than death, which is basically death. Zotanga, yeah. And they won't discover that they're not there, so they have to go to Helion. There's a big battle. They win the battle, and in the end, he asks if Deja will marry him, and Deja says yes. And the reason for it is not completely clear. You have to read between the lines. And then some guard, after they've had a bit of a porky, did the porky thing, he gets out of bed, goes for a wander.
Consummate the marriage, I think.
Consummate the marriage.
Porky.
He winds up bumping into a guard who just happens to be a Thern in disguise.
After they bumped uglies, he bumped into a guard.
Yep. He gets transported back to Earth, and then we go through the scene with Edgar, realizing that he's not dead. That's kind of
the reveal that they can shape change.
Yeah, they shape change and change forms. And he's like, okay. And he's reading through the diary and realizing that when he got transported to Earth, he wanted to go back to Barsoom, but he couldn't. He wanted to get back to Deja. And he decided...
Oh, so when he's back on Earth as well, it's Bryan Cranston's character as a skeleton, which kind of shows he's been away for a long time as well.
Yep.
Is everybody following this so far?
Yep. Let's just keep going.
Let's just check in. Just checking on our listeners.
Because we're going to get distracted. So he's trying to find them another medallion, because he threw the medallion away when he was on Barsoom and got transported back to Earth. So he doesn't have the medallion anymore. So he knows the Therns are around, so he's looking for them. Searches for 10 years, can't find them. Hardly ages. Finally seems to have given up, but he hasn't. He's got this sneaky plan. He uses Ned as bait to get the Therns to bring him a medallion, and when they're trying to kill Ned, who's about to open up his mausoleum, thinking that he's probably still alive, or to try to destroy his body, because that's what they're after, they need Ned to do that. And John's right behind the Thern, kills the Thern, saves Ned, and stops the threat. at that particular time. Then he gets Ned to look after him. He goes back into the mausoleum, transports himself back to Mars, and we end.
Yeah, lives happily ever after.
Okay.
Somehow.
No, it doesn't. There's another 2 novels.
No. Yeah, there's another 10 novels.
Yeah, and
that we will
the first
never
3
see.
novels,
Yeah.
the first 3 novels are probably the best ones, and after that, it's not really worth reading them, if you ask me. But yeah, that's the story.
Same thing with the Gore novels.
So, did you get confused?
You feel better, Freak?
Yeah, I just don't want to sit here for half an hour and out going through the fucking plot because it's just too much pain.
Yeah, there was a lot of setup. There's a lot of so the intrigue is not actually that difficult. You've got basically 3 factions working, and John Carter is the catalyst that is setting them all off. So he's the random factor which they use as an excuse to execute all these plots and accelerate the action. So that's a classic sort of a trope, where he's everything is a powder keg and he's the match. That's a good way to have a main character in a story that the action is set off by him, and that's kind of interesting. As for because you got the princess and she's in an arranged marriage. That's a classic trope. And you've got the megalomaniacal, charismatic bad guy who is basically a tyrant, and that's also a trope as well. And then of course you've got the secret order of aliens, doing their Men in Black thing, and that's also a trope.
I think that's the success and the failure of the film is the tropes. But what you got to realize is this is based on a 1912 book that invented the tropes.
Yeah.
Yes, invented the cliches. Yeah.
The reason these have become tropes is because everyone's ripped off John Carter.
They are the base. Like this is the Latin that we spoke that all sci-fi is based on. So that
it's a real chicken and egg situation.
This is the Sanskrit of sci-fi.
Yeah, it is really difficult though. I mean, you think about because it took so long and because the novels were not really well known anymore. They had kind of fallen out of favor, or they just weren't read as much as they were before. The modern audience just saw this as all being derivative of other science fiction and fantasy films that had, as far as they were concerned, had done it better. Or done it first, like Star Wars and Avatar and Superman, and
just even now, like Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah,
the Hulk scene.
Yeah,
the gladiator scene. That's
exactly
all.
a lot of this, and so when you borrow all these elements from the Princess of Mars, nobody sees it as being original and really advanced and clever. Instead, they just see it as being stuff that is a repeat, and I think a lot of the reviewers, critics included, because let's get real, movie critics are not the brightest fellows, chappies or ladies. They are just as fucking stupid as an audience will be. They don't read this. None of them knew where it came from. They had no idea. They didn't see any kind of correlation whatsoever. Because they don't read books. Most of our new generation don't read books anymore.
And to be fair, it didn't present itself as a historical treasure, a gem brought to us. It didn't, and it was competing against all of these modern movies, and so these tropes, of course, do seem cliched and tired and old. So it did seem very derivative, but nobody, because they didn't tell anybody this is where all these concepts come from.
Yeah, So what are we talking about next, dude? Are we doing behind the scenes? Or are we doing the actors and the characters? What are we talking about, man?
What do you want?
I like the behind the scenes.
Yeah, let's do behind the scenes.
Let's do behind the scenes first then. Okay. So we know a lot about Andrew and Stanton and the the director behind this. The editor was Eric Zambrunnin and Mark Andrews. Now, I believe that Zambrunnin was a long-time collaborator with Spike Jonze, who was known for his work on Being John Malkovich, that movie. For those of you,
he is known to me as he's a music video director, mostly known for Beastie Boys Sabotage.
Yep,
is one of his big ones. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I believe also Mark Andrews was one of the film's screenwriters. He also assisted in editing the film to help match Stanton's vision, which is probably a mistake because Mark is not an editor. This is why the film feels so disjointed, because they've tried to do too many things and be too clever. So the editing process was extensive. There were significant changes made in post-production to fix pacing issues, but what they achieved was a lot of confusion. And I think this film died, and like most films, either die or live on the cutting room floor. And this is where it died primarily, because
If I can interject,
you would only have to recut this movie a little bit, and it would actually make far more sense and probably be a cleaner movie than it is right now.
I've been reading some of the quotes from the director of Andor and Rogue One, essentially, and his founding philosophy, his very iron principle, is that he takes it more seriously than any other Star Wars director has ever taken. He's like, this is real to me. This is a real universe. So he is very, very firm on saying, yes, we're doing an Andor part, season 2. Is the female protagonist from Rogue One going to show up in this? And he's like, no, there's no reason for her to be in the story. And if there's no reason for it to be in the story, but you're just putting it in there as representation, don't put it in there. And that's what John Carter suffers from very much. Is like, I want to shove all of the cool things about John Carter into this movie. It's just like, no, you should have just simplified it and introduced the idea and stuck very much to the source material.
It was envisioned to be a trilogy, I think.
Yeah, but to be fair, this film did change a lot of things in the book that probably did need to be changed.
Yeah,
but it's just the way they ordered things. It's like anything. If you're going to the tavern and going to get pissed and then get drunk the next day, start with, you go to the tavern, you get pissed, and then you wind up falling asleep in your bed. Don't start with, you wake up in bed with a headache because you were at a tavern last night after you went to it and got pissed. You got to keep the structure nice and sensible, chronological as much as possible. Otherwise, people get confused. And that died on the cutting room floor, this movie.
Yeah, it's a classic case of, if you don't understand a word in a sentence, the rest of the sentence is you're not going to hear it, because you're thinking, what was that word?
Yeah.
That's a classic problem with writing.
So interesting, there are 3 producers. Lindsay Collins, not to be confused with the actress in it, Jim Morris, and not the singer, and Colin Wilson. So Jim Morris had worked at Pixar for years, and he helped Stanton's vision into the live action filmmaking process. He was supposed to be there to assist with that process because he had been, worked with Pixar, but he supposedly had some experience in that area as well.
We all know what that's like, right? It's like, I'm trying something I've never done before. Dude, you've done this before. Can you come with me, please, please, please? Yeah.
But the reality is they had a lot of people who knew what they were doing. So Colin Wilson was also known to be he was producer as part of a massive blockbuster called Avatar and War of the Worlds. The War of the Worlds that was made with Tom Cruise. So he knew how to do live action, special effects, and make that work. So he had plenty of assistance. The film was co-production between Walt Disney Pictures and Pixar, and I think that is not a good sign. But Disney did all the marketing separately from Pixar's, CGI project stuff. So they did all the marketing. Now, I have heard that Andrew was also part of the marketing at some point because of the big change in the executives at Disney at the time, because there was a big, huge shakeup taking place. But my understanding is that Disney was the ones who get to sign off primarily on how long the film would run in the theater, and the marketing process. They were really very much part of that.
One thing that's worth mentioning as well, this is also the same year that Disney were trying to acquire the rights to Star Wars. Yeah. So they had their eyes on a bigger fish. So they really didn't give a fuck about John Carter that much.
Yeah, you have to understand that these corporations will tank $1 million projects if they're inconvenient. That's just one of the really frustrating things about being a creative person. Like, when I was consulting on a video game, for instance. None of us realized that the corporation that was buying up the company was just going to tank it, which is heartbreaking for everybody who worked for 3 years before that game got to market. You know, but that's what you deal with.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. Now music. So the music in this is quite astounding.
Great score.
Yeah. Yeah. So I believe created by Michael Giacchino and I don't know if I got that pronounced right.
Apologize to any Italian listeners out there.
I probably butchered that. I think it's Giacchino.
Giacchino.
So he collaborated and composed the score for a lot of Andrew Stanton's work. He also worked on the Up movie, the animated Up movie. He worked on the Incredibles movie. The soundtrack was praised as one of the strongest elements of the film, capturing that adventure and romance. And that's what the story's about. It's about romance, but it's a weird romance and adventure. And he recorded the score with an orchestra at Abbey Road Studios in London. So it is
This is another trope it stole. Finding alien life and fucking it.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
All right, sorry.
So there's your music, and I don't know about you, but I always thought the music was fantastic.
Yeah, solid score.
I think it's Giacchino.
Giacchino.
Okay. Thank you very much.
He's American anyway, so that's all good.
Yeah. So the screenwriter. Now, Andrew Stanton did a lot of the screenwriting as well. It's not just Mark Andrews. And they also had Michael Cabon. Now, I believe that Michael Cabon is a Pulitzer Prize award-winning novelist.
Pulitzer.
Oh, God.
Pulitzer Prize.
Yes, that's the one.
By the way, I think Michael Giacchino is doing the composition for the Fantastic Four movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Which is good because Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four movie we've got so far. So lines up.
Yeah. So he was responsible for the amazing adventures of Cavalier and Clay, and he co-wrote the script. So it's not like the script did not have strong roots. What they did is they took the book and they wrote a script to modernize this 100-year-old novel that really needed to have some modernizing take place, but still stay true to the pulp adventure roots, which is why you get strange scenes where you're expecting a big, huge fight, and it's all over one head getting lopped off, which is quite common in older stories where, if you've already beaten the shit out of two large white apes, why would you then have another battle with somebody else?
That's how they introduce his strength in the film, isn't it? He just one punches that much and kills him.
It basically, they've already set it up that there's nobody that can stop him. And so yes, so I imagine that script got chopped and changed a lot when it came to the editing process. So I don't doubt they didn't have capable screenwriters. I think they probably did.
No, well, Andrews, that's where he was the screenwriter for Toy Story, Bugs Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc. They're great stories.
And the story of John Carter, his progression and his arc, is much stronger in the movie than it is in the original book, if you ask me. The special effects was done by Peter, is it Chung? I think it's Chung or Chang. And they used visual effects supervisor from Double Negative. So the film used a combination of motion capture, CGI for the Martian or creatures, and they used the white apes. They used in the arena battle. There's a lot of CGI and motion capture performances.
They probably used the massive program from Weta Workshop to do the battle scenes.
No, this is. I don't think Weta was. No. I know that William Dafoe complained about because he had to be on stilts with like all the shit on top of him and stuff. And
right.
So the effects team studied real life.
Wouldn't have had that problem with Tom Cruise.
No.
It's kind of it's kind of ridiculous to do like an on singing live capture thing like that. But like it would have been really hard for him to like with Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, where he was on a green screen with nobody there and he was doing his lines and he just couldn't handle it because it's totally a foreign environment for a stage actor to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And William Dafoe is a very, very, very experienced actor.
Yeah, he is. And yeah, but we'll get to him. So the effects team studied real life desert landscapes to create the look for Barsoom's terrain, because it's not just, they didn't just use the real footage, they adjusted it with CGI as well. So everything you see is changed. It's not just shot from wherever they were at the time. The sonography was done by Daniel Mendel, and Mendel is really experienced, known for Star Trek 2009, which
Beastie Boys.
Yeah, that's the one. It's the Beastie Boys one. Mission Impossible 3. The film was shot in real-world deserts and Utah, significantly modified to make it feel more Martian. And the biggest problem was, how do you light a vast desert landscape and maintain a consistent look that's in the daytime? Because most of it is in the day. So that really causes problems when you can't control the lighting.
Yeah.
And then you're incorporating CGI elements. So there's a lot going on.
If light is pivotal to this movie, it should have been a big element of the cinematography because of all of the ships run on light and everything like that. So light, and also the vibration and the blue energy and all that sort of stuff. Light is a critical element of this movie, and it should have been precursors. There should have been rainbows and things like that at the start of the movie, which leads you into the idea of light being a pervasive plot thematic element all the way through,
and colors as well.
Colors, yeah, and gold, and that sort of thing.
So that's everybody behind the scenes that I have.
Yeah. Who did the catering, Fred? Who did the catering? No.
The catering? Actually, there were two ladies, and I can't remember because I remember watching an interview with them. It was really funny. They were saying like, all we do is feed these people, and if we close up shop for just 5 minutes, they freak out and start losing their minds. Mm-hmm. And so it was rather amusing watching the caterers.
Having been on the Xena set, right, where I was in Henderson, the catering was unbelievably good. Like, basically, it's a big smorgasbord. You just walk in at lunchtime, and there's a big heaped thing of rice and stir fry and coffee and tea. Oh, it was fantastic. That was like, you get paid well. Like, so over 2 days' work, I got $300, which was pretty damn good for just standing around in a monk's outfit. And and the catering was fantastic. So we got fed well. We got transported to and from the set. It was really, really great job. Unfortunately, I didn't get hired again because we made too much noise playing Hacky Sack.
Well, we're not talking John Catering of Mars here.
No.
Yeah, we've moved away from John Catering. Okay, all right.
But I do feel for those actors because they had to be shirtless for a lot of that, and for actors, particularly guys, they have to lower their body. They have to lower their body water very severely.
Let's talk about Taylor Kish because he does. Yeah, he is Tarzan. I thought he did a good job.
He did.
Yeah, he's not a bad actor. He may have been in some projects that have not done well. And he
was Gambit in the Wolverine. Prior to that,
but before that, he had another role, and he was commended on his acting ability in movies before he started doing these superhero fantasy battleship movies. And he has come back a little bit, but it kind of stunted his career doing these movies.
He did well. He had 3 flops in a row, I believe. He came off a TV show called Friday Night Lights, which was a drama about American football. Yeah, he got a lot of praise for his role in that.
Yeah,
and then he went on to do. Yeah, he was cast as Gambit in Wolverine Origins, and then John Carter, and then after that, Battleship. With
Battleship. Oh boy, special mention to Battleship, the world's most expensive board game commercial I've ever seen.
My battleship has sunk your career.
The great thing was I went and saw that with a friend of mine, and our joy is sitting in an empty theater and just ripping the shit out of a movie while we're watching it. And that one point where they were doing the whole "where's their thing?" and we set up these boys and stuff, and then we like turned to each other and went, "They're literally playing Battleship right now."
yeah.
Anyway, so funny. But the aliens in that were really good. So unfortunately they sunk some really good special effects and stuff in there. But it was ridiculous.
I mean, John Carter and Tarzan aren't dissimilar. They're a charismatic guy that walks around with his shirt off. You need to look good. You need to have a physical presence, and you need to have charisma. And I thought he did well. That I really like that ongoing joke with the Virginia thing.
Getting called Virginia rather than John.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, every young man has a fantasy of like shirtless, cutting through alien hordes and rescuing the princess.
It's a loincloth. He's a hero in a loincloth.
Exactly.
It's basic male wish fulfillment fantasy.
And John is basically Edgar's father.
Yeah.
He's basically put his father into the story.
Yes, he has. Yes.
If you hadn't figured it out, okay. So one of the things about Taylor is he's a very physical guy. Like he's pretty well built. But he still did a lot of intensive physical training to portray John Carter. A lot of weight training, a lot of martial arts, learning how to fight with a sword.
A lot of jumping.
Wire work is very tiring. Yeah. It's a hard job.
Yeah, he did a lot of work to help sort of figure out how to show how John was affected in this low gravity on Mars or Barsoom. He often performed all of his own wire stunts to make the jumps look more realistic. And
Tom Cruise wouldn't even use wire.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm telling you, Fred, you got to focus, Fred.
Yeah, focus. Yeah.
Tom Cruise's John Carter would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Cruise is not a human being, mate. But
I'll
anyway,
tell you who would have been good as prime Matthew McConaughey in his day.
Maybe. Yeah,
he would have pulled it off.
Yeah, so
he's got.
I mean, he could, but Taylor wound up suffering multiple injuries during the filming process, including dislocating his shoulder while performing his own stunts.
Ouch!
So he did way too many of his own stunts, and often because it would have been too obvious that it was a stunt person, because the angle would have had to be, you wouldn't be able to put the angle and show his face without removing the stuntman's face and sticking his face there. Mm-hmm. So this is part of the problem. He had really long hair during the filming, which was actually a wig. But as soon as the wig came off after filming and it all wrapped up, he decided to shave all his hair off, which is really strange.
And then goes on the promotion tour.
Yeah, he was really absolutely hammered for not being. People were so adamant that if you'd got a named actor, who was well known rather than Taylor, the movie would have done a lot better. And I don't think that's the case. I think that is just not been proven. Avatar didn't work that way. Star Wars didn't work that way. None of those people were known. They were just there. They just did a good job. He was criticized for not being charismatic enough and likable as John Carter, because John Carter is a weird character, right? He's not your normal hero. He is the anti-hero, in many cases. He's a character who is an old soldier. Even though he looks young, he's got an old mentality. He's unmatched in battle, but we're not shown that until later on. He has no interest in war whatsoever because he's lost everything that he's ever loved, his wife, his family. It's gone. And he doesn't care about nothing. He sees no way forward other than to make himself rich and live out the rest of his life as a wealthy man. And he doesn't care about nothing. Now, that's what he tells himself, but this is not necessarily how he functions. He can't help himself. Okay, because every time he gets put into a situation, he finds himself saving people who are about to die because he's forced into really bad situations. And the heart of him is he is still a good person who doesn't want to see bad things happen to other people.
Not even people. He even saves the dog. That's
exactly
when he
the dog
first escapes.
Yeah,
they're beating the shit out of the dog creature, and that's how he ends up jumping in there and
Yeah.
So
he does this with everything, and he doesn't want to be part of the war process. So it's weird when he winds up coming across Deja and saving Deja. Deja thinks, okay, I have somebody who's really capable and might help me with my primary goal is. And it's only when he realizes that Deja will do anything to save Barsoom.
I do like that scene where she surrenders. You have captured me.
Yeah.
It's
It's
really
a good
casual.
scene. Yeah. But if you look at this is a weird relationship between John and Deja, because when he realizes that Deja will do absolutely anything at all to save Barsoom, not Helion, she doesn't love John. Her true love, out of everything else, her true love is Barsoom, Mars. So when John sees the value in saving Mars, not Helion, as a higher calling, that is when he decides to adopt Deja's primary goal as his own. And this is really difficult for a lot of the audience to understand, that you're not seeing your traditional love story. This is a story that revolves around two individuals, one who loves Barsoom over everything else, and another that learns to love Barsoom.
Anything. He learns to love anything. He's looking for a reason to live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and he sees the value on not necessarily saving Helion, but saving Barsoom overall.
Yeah, because in a way, he's writing about his grandfather's PTSD when you think about it. Yeah.
Exactly.
She was unknown as well, wasn't she, Lynn Collins, at the time?
No, well, she was unknown, but she had been in some movies. She had been in X-Men Origins Wolverine in 2009 with Taylor.
Same as with Taylor, yeah.
She played Silver Fox, and they were actually friends. They've been friends for a while. And so they had a good relationship amongst themselves. Like, it's not like they didn't have chemistry, but the chemistry in real life is friends, not lovers, of course. But Collins did a lot of extensive sword fighting and combat training as well for all the scenes that she had to play. She's basically a warrior princess of Mars. Like, she is the true kick-ass Princess Leia. Like, she is the original, right? I think Collins described the experience of playing that character, Deja, as exhausting because of all the heavy costumes. She spent hours. Like, it would take so long to put all those tattoos on her and all those patterns on her because she's covered in it. So much makeup going on.
They're all red.
Yeah, and she performed as many of those fight scenes as she possibly could. And it was in the desert and it was hot. So she went and researched historical warrior cultures to develop Deja's sort of regal, fierce persona. And it's a really interesting character. Deja is one of my favorite characters out of any movie I've ever seen.
I bet they wanted Megan Fox to do that. Do that role. She was 26 at the time. She was pretty much in her prime.
I mean, there's nothing. Lynn Collins is pretty awesome. Like, she's stunning. And
I'm just saying that as a draw card named thing and stuff, Megan Fox would have
been.
What
about let's go into Matai Shang or Mark Strong's character. He was a little bit underwhelming to me. Like, he's the shadowy. Yeah, he's really the big bad of the film.
Yeah, he was boring.
I like Mark Strong as well. I've always thought he looks like a shaved head version of Andy Garcia to me.
Yeah. So one of the problems with bringing the Therns in this movie is I don't believe that the first book actually even mentions them.
No, you're correct.
The Therns came into play later on. They were not the big reveal. So bringing the Therns in initially.
That's another trope there, the shadowy empire. This is Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Or the Empire or the Sith. Yeah. The Sith. Yeah. I mean, basically, Therns are the Sith.
The puppet master behind the strings, pulling the strings, behind the scenes. Because whenever we saw him in the film, that wasn't really very clear. I assume he was in disguise the whole time, and we were just seeing as an audience his true appearance. or was he?
I think the problem is that it is not clear what his true form is, but I think, when he looks like Mark Strong, I think that is his true form. But
Yeah,
being the leader of the Therns,
but
um,
is that what Seb Tharn is seeing when he's Mark Strong? Is he seeing Mark Strong, or is he
yeah,
seeing another?
probably, but not always, because it was not clear. Because what Matai Shan would change his form constantly
Mm.
in front of everybody. Like, he was never staying the same. He was always changing his form, and you weren't too sure if he could present his form differently to himself and to other people in the same room at the same time. Like, it was really not that clear.
So what's their goals? What was Mata Shang's?
Well, the Therns is very clear. He said it exactly how it is. They used a goddess as a screen for their activities. And what they literally would do is they would go around, their society would go around to different worlds, and any cultures or worlds that were starting to develop and look like they might potentially be a threat, they would destroy them by orchestrating their destruction.
Mm.
Mm.
And that way that they would never be a threat to the Therns, who knew that anybody who grew enough power, learned about the ninth ray, developed enough technology, could potentially challenge them, and they didn't want that.
Mm.
That's what you learn about the Therns, if that wasn't clear.
Also, the moving city, that was cool as well.
Yeah,
That's
it was
another,
cool.
another
Yeah.
trope that's been
Yeah.
Mortal Engines.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, so did you also notice that, like, there's a lot of discussion about the well, not a lot, but a little bit of discussion about the ninth ray and how the
Yeah.
ninth ray would allow literally bringing back the oceans to a planet, teleportation, changing, the visual appearance of somebody or something.
It's the
Uh,
MacGuffin of
yeah,
the film.
it is the MacGuffin. It is the thing that does everything.
Mm.
Strong is always, Mark Strong's not the wrong person to play this character. He's always been a good go-to for a villainous role.
Mm.
Yeah.
He did a great job in Sherlock Holmes. He even did a great job in Green Lantern 2011, which is not a
Yeah.
great film, but
And Kick-Ass, I like him in Kick-Ass as well.
yeah.
Mm.
So
Bad guy.
he's done a pretty solid job.
Yeah.
What about? I think probably we need to talk a little bit about Tars Tarkas, because Tars Tarkas, whether you realize it or not, is actually a major key character who doesn't get a lot of play necessarily in this film. You don't see him a lot, and you don't see him later on in the books that much either.
Mm.
But
He's almost like a comedy sidekick in the film.
Tars Tarkas,
Mm-hmm.
the 9 foot tall Thark leader. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, because he's the one who's like Virginia. He and it turns into a rolling joke that's his name now, and
He's kind of like, because they introduce the Tharks as, like, obviously when they bring those little babies in, how their parenting skills are so savage. Like the Orcs are like a savage tribe. Obviously they're meant to be the Indians or the Apache, represent that side of it. And he's kind of the voice of reason, isn't he? Because he
looks at John Carter as like a prize. Like he's a curiosity. Yeah, so it increases his status by having this unusual freak, on a chain.
If you show humanity in that tribe, you're considered weak, and he obviously that's why he hides his daughter. He's constantly being challenged for his role as the leader, and John Carter teaches him to be human.
Yeah.
Well,
so he's very much a non-traditional Thark.
Yeah. Well, I think he is a traditional Thark. Here's the problem. I think the Tharks, and Tars Tarkas knows this, and it's not well spelled out unless you see some of the extra footage or you can read between the lines. But Tars Tarkas is a traditional Thark. Before the Tharks fell from their grace, and in the past, the Tharks were a honorable race who believed in self-sacrifice, which is now considered weakness, who believed in mercy, which now is considered weakness, who believed in looking after each other and looking after their planet. And Tars Tarkas believes John Carter can restore the Tharks' honor and their values because he watches his tribe rally behind John when he saves Deja, who is not part of their tribe. Normally they would just cheer that she dies. Like they just, that would be the norm for
Yeah,
his
they
tribe.
were just observing these two
Yeah.
people fighting, and then he sees her dangling and
Yeah, and he goes
called
and rescues
action.
her, and they're cheering
Yeah.
for the fact that he's done that. And then he destroys these ships, and they start cheering for that. And he starts to realize that maybe he can use John to get the Tharks to shift their way of thinking, because he's battling all his lieutenants who are following the way, which is show no mercy, because weakness and showing mercy and anything like that is considered bad. And if you do that, you should kill them. Like that is what he's trying to deal with, and he's constantly trying to push against that. So,
but he's bound by it too. Like with his daughter, if you get one more tattoo, you're going to have to get killed or outcast or whatever.
Yeah,
but he'll still do it because he can't let on to the rest of them. He'll lose all of his status if they find out that he's got a familial bond with her, or that he's bending the traditional rules. So he's bound by his traditions. He can't escape it. So John Carter is like a breath of fresh air. You're something that is unknown. Is something that you're a random element. So I'm going to use the random element to get out of this trap I'm in of traditionalism.
Yeah. Yeah, and eventually he winds up going against what the Tharks would normally do, and finds himself in the arena and losing his position as the leader.
Yeah, and then John Carter, of course, goes and does completely forbidden stuff, and who pays the price for it? His daughter. So it kind of backfires on him.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, but in the end, Tars Tarkas is, who realizes that when John takes on the White Apes and the new leader of the Tharks and dispatches them easily, like there's nothing they can't do now. And so
it's like you're bound by tradition and all that sort of stuff, but your traditions also mean that you can always get out of any situation by killing the person who's bothering you. And John Carter can't be killed, so it's like get out of jail free card. It's like just challenge him to a fight to the death. Oh, is that all? Yeah. That'll sort it out.
I thought it was interesting because William Dafoe had a really good attitude, although he, it was really hard working on stilts doing motion capture. He had a really good attitude to the whole process. He said it was one of the most challenging things he's ever done in his life, but also one of the most unique acting experiences he's ever had. And and you could see that he relished the idea of being able to do it. I would imagine by the end of the movie, he was probably feeling a little bit over it, but he's still a professional. He still knows how to get things done.
Yeah,
and he's willing to work with new technology. And stilts and motion capture, that's new technology when it was being made back in 2012.
Yeah, I could just imagine an actor just like leaping at the chance to do something that break into a new field or that sort of thing. Yeah.
What about Samantha Morton, Solar?
Yeah, she's like the nursemaid, I guess. She's the compassion. So she, like AJ said, she's the exposition machine as well.
Yeah.
So this was not a normal role for Samantha. This is not the sort of thing, standing on stilts and doing motion capture and portraying a Thark character like an alien. But apparently Samantha was quite excited to take on the role because it was something completely different to anything she'd ever done. And she'd done mostly dramatic films. Like most of her films had been dramas rather than action, adventure, science fiction, fantasy.
She's probably mostly known for Minority Report. Prior to this, which is she's the shaved head thing that can person that can predict the future. That Tom Cruise.
What about Dominic West, who did Saab Than?
I constantly got him confused with the other.
With Mark Strong's.
The other guy, was it Tardos Moores? Was the other? Who was the other?
The other Thark.
Yeah,
the Thark lieutenant who was such
They look so similar.
Well, they didn't look so similar, but their names were very similar. Like everybody had a name that started with T. It doesn't really help. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but there were so many names that started with a T. That's not a good thing, But Dominic was pretty good as a main villain. I think he portrayed that ruthless warlord of Zardanga pretty well. You know, in the elaborate costume that he wore, the heavy armor and the fight scenes. He
had this smirky,
yeah,
smirky badass look to him.
Yeah, and he approached all those demanding physical scenes pretty well. He apparently in this movie he was known for improvising some of his villainous lines, and he did quite a bit of that. So it might have been written some way, but West managed to get in there and change his lines to something else, which is nice to see that an actor was able to have some bearing on the character. And his lines were quite amusing. You know, they weren't the funniest, but they certainly were fitting.
Yeah.
And he was menacing. You definitely get that menacing feeling from him.
Yeah.
Bryan Cranston. I don't think there's an awful lot to say about Bryan Cranston other than it's Bryan. You know,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he played the U.S. Army officer that you were talking about. I believe
it's just a fun little scene but when he's trying to recruit him and it just he keeps punching him or jumping through the window or it's a throwaway scene, but it's fun. Yeah.
I should mention that Samantha Morton played the psychic in the pool in Minority Report, in case you don't put a name to the face.
Yeah, well, I think that's what Nacho had said. The bald one, which is
she's one of those actors where you look at her face and say, "I've seen her in so much stuff," but you just can't remember who she is.
Yeah, she's a chameleon.
Yeah.
Cranston said it was a really fun role to play, and he described it as breaking away from a sort of dark, intense character in Breaking Bad, which was something he liked. But the interesting thing is about Colonel Powell, or the Powell character, was supposed to be a friend to John Carter in the book, who dies.
In the novel, they're partners, and they discover the Cave of Gold, and he is going ahead to get mining supplies. And John Carter stays at the cave, and as he's scouting ahead, John Carter noticed that Indians are trailing him. So then he sort of chases after him, but he finds him already dead. So he's hardly in I think he's in the first chapter for about half a page. But they're business partners in the book.
So I think probably the hardest thing for the audience to understand is the love story between, and we talked about this a little bit, between John and Deja. And Deja is, if you look at her character, probably the most amazing character in the film in many respects, even with John jumping around and beating the shit out of everything, because she's really smart. She's smarter than everybody else. She's an excellent warrior. She almost succeeds in developing the science for the ninth ray that will allow them to save the world of Barsoom and restore water to it and stop their dependence on an ore or a crystal that they use to power their ships that is actually killing the planet. And it's sabotage, but she almost did it. It's almost there. And her goal is to save Barsoom, as we said, but also to destroy the evil forces responsible for Barsoom's fall. So Deja is prepared as her goal to give her heart, her body, and her soul to anybody who can achieve that. And that means marriage or whatever, or even her life, she would do that. And marrying Sabthan, if that were the route to success, she would have done that. But it's actually John Carter that she sees a route towards. So this is a
possibly why the original book was called Princess of Mars rather than John Carter.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it is very much about her character and how John interacts with her. And in the book, she makes John work really, really hard to actually have any kind of relationship with her. But that's that. So what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about some of the special effects, or do you want to talk about some of the critical problems or conclusion? I don't know, man. What do you want to do?
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty good. I don't have much else to say. I've got a few reviews maybe to just quickly go through. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh God, I'm gonna really hate the reviews because here we go.
These are amateur reviews, and these are people that all love the film.
Okay, I'll do that.
I completely skewed it.
You skewed it because because the critical acclaim on this film is not good.
Yeah,
and you can tell that
nobody's listening to this podcast if they hate the movie.
No, they're not. but the critics on this movie were clearly unfamiliar with a lot of shit.
Well, let's give our closing thoughts each on it, and then I'll do the reviews, and then we'll wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
I'm happy to watch this movie again.
I am planning to watch it again. Probably I was going to watch it last night, but I got caught up doing something else, and I'll watch it tonight. And I've watched it probably in the last couple of weeks already. Like, it is one of my favorite movies to watch.
Yep, it's a good shelf stocker.
It is.
There
Absolutely.
should have been. There was rumors of Disney Plus making a live action series, but
No,
I
it
haven't
isn't going to
heard
happen.
any. Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I think that was last reported on in 2022. So
Yeah, again, an animated movie would probably be good, or maybe an AI generated CGI movie would be pretty good. Yeah.
I think animated is the best way to go. I think anywhere else, and it's just going to be trouble.
Yeah, you're going to have another budget blowout.
Yeah.
Despite its initial failure, I think it features good visuals, deep sci-fi lore. It just suffered from mismanagement and lack of potential. It's definitely worth
something like
out.
an animated Netflix show where you can binge watch, 12 episodes or something like that, where they can develop a good long storyline like Andor or something like that. And take the subject matter seriously.
All right.
Yeah.
So here's some reviews I pulled off Letterboxd. Some people that do like this film. This is from a Noel Meller. With the heart of a classics 80s adventure and modern aesthetics. Modern aesthetics. Yes. John Carter did what so many have failed to do. It made me feel like a kid again. 4.5 stars. From
out of what? 5.
Out of 5. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
These are all. Yeah, Letterboxd lets you rate movies out of 5. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Intermission. Good God, I'm on Mars. Unfairly dumped, unfairly reviewed. It's got the juice, and especially those bookends. 5 out of 5. Charmy Watcher. In a different timeline, we could have had the greatest sci-fi trilogy. 5 stars. Chemical Vault. An American guy shows up and solves a generation of racial conflict just by being ridiculously awesome. 5 stars.
Yeah. It's a classic white man savior trope as well.
And this is from Harry. John Carter is so fine. I love it when a man spends the majority of his movie with his tits out. 5 stars. Yep.
Oh, I shudder to think what his diet would have been like during those times. It would have been so grueling to walk past the catering tent and knowing that he couldn't touch any of it.
Boiled chicken and broccoli.
Yeah, boiled chicken and broccoli and no water. That's what it would have been like every day. He would have been just like suffering from headaches and cramps and sore kidneys every day. Yeah. You can't walk around with that low body fat and just have a normal day.
I think there is a whole bunch of like Disney released live action movies around this period that just didn't get the love they deserved. Tomorrowland I can think of. They just didn't know what they were doing. The marketing department.
I think the problem is there were a lot of ventures and projects they put forward that they threw too much money at.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They were expecting things that to do well that really had no previous record. There was no real track record for The Princess of Mars or Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom novels that people knew about because its run had long finished. Its popularity and its people knowing about it had well and truly gone. It's not like Lord of the Rings. Where Lord of the Rings is in the top 10 or 20 best-selling books still to this very day, which is crazy shit.
No one that read the novel in 1912 was going to the movies in 2012.
Yeah. And given our new generation, there's still some that read books, but the vast majority, when you ask them, have you read a book in the last year to 5 years, they don't. They might have listened to a book as an audio book, but they don't read, and they don't know anything about nothing usually. So that's a real problem. And a film that is made 100 years too late, where everything has already been shown in some other property, is a problem. And a love story that's not a cliche traditional story, which is very hard for people to approach. Like it is a love story about global necessity, respect for values, and a relationship of reciprocation. That is a strange love story for most people to deal with. And it's so twisted. There's so many misdirections that start off with, there's no hope and da-da-da-da.
No sex till after marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Arranged marriage is always a
I mean,
a
this
high.
wasn't written very long after the concept of women as property was normal.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite different.
Yeah, and this literally, in many respects, is this is a story that is kind of out of its time zone, and it's
Tarzan's the same as well. Like Tarzan is another,
yeah.
Yeah, another one that doesn't fit with today's sensibilities.
But it's not just that. You think about our audience right now. I don't think that this story is too advanced for the current modern audience to deal with. I don't think your average movie watcher can pick up on all the sorts of things that are going on here. They would need it spelled out. Now, I would like to think you can make smart movies and audiences will understand, but sometimes that doesn't work. And it doesn't help if you chop your movie up and have a lot of flashbacks and you go back and forth. And it's a bit hard for them to comprehend.
That's another trope it's ahead of alien conspiracies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I honestly think this film,
This film has got so many tropes that you just like,
yeah. If this film, if you tidy up the editing, is probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest films that's ever been made. Because I keep going back to it out of my library because it is so impressive.
Yeah, if Tom Cruise was involved, it would have been a much tighter movie production and would have been a much tighter plot. He does bring a lot of that to the.
It would have been also a Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, but I mean, it would have been a Tom Cruise movie.
Yeah. So,
and he's brought a lot to some real stinkers. Some stinky plots, like the one where he was like a clone. Yeah, that sucked. But he did a very good job of it.
Yeah,
it was still entertaining to watch, even though the movie is kind of ridiculous. But yeah,
like Fred said, this is a film that was just made a little bit too late, and due to the fact it comes across as being so tropish, when in fact it is.
It's the origin of the tropes. Yeah. It wasn't presented with the reverence for history that it should have been.
It's, to me, I like these films as a Saturday afternoon film. I don't know, it's got that vibe.
Good example is Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow.
Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a film we should cover.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, final thoughts. Me, Tarzan, you, Stockholm Syndrome.
Should have called it Tarzan on Mars.
Yeah.
I still reckon the battle for Barsoom would have been the alliteration that would have worked, and a decent trailer. Like, you can't make a trailer that just has a whole lot of people standing around talking, and no real action when it's an action film. Like, that doesn't help.
Yeah, the whole thing where they're going through the canals and looking for the thing was a massive missed opportunity for pacing. They should have been chased the entire way. So everything should have been a desperate gambit. And that's how they discover it. Like, I don't have time for this. And it's just like, you need to learn about the Ninth Ray and stuff like that. And he'd be like, what? And so, that would have been... Yeah,
they just don't make movies like this. And I love these type of films. We don't get enough of these sort of action sci-fi. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, we've got the Odyssey coming from Chris Nolan.
Yeah. That's Roman, isn't it? Is that Roman? What's that?
No,
I don't know much about Greek mythology.
Is it? Okay.
The Romans. The only thing the Romans brought in terms of literature was blood and history. They never had any stories or mythology or legend that was worth using, because they just stole everybody else's. So
all right, let's wrap it up.
Can't think of any modern culture that's like that. All right, and that's it from Nacho.
Yeah, it's good night from me. And Fred, this is when you normally...
Come on, Fred. I set it up for you.
Set up for what? Oh, and this is goodbye from John Carter, because you're never gonna fucking see him again on the film scene. It's just not gonna happen. I'm sorry, but it's gone.
John Catering of Mars.
That was very good,
Barsoom.
but you were supposed to say that, and it's good night from them, and it would have been perfect, but that's okay. We can work on it. We've got another 40 episodes to go.
Yeah, we'll get there one day.
Around episode 43, you'll get it right.
Yeah, good.
That's 40. We're closing in on 43.
We're closing in
mate.
on 43. It'll pass us by.
All right. Thanks, everyone.